Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are cracking open a file that is, well, it's deceptively heavy.
Yeah.
It looks like one thing on the surface, maybe a bit of dry philosophy, but once you actually start reading, you realize we are dealing with the operating system of the modern world.
That is not an exaggeration at all. We are looking at a figure who essentially reset the board for how we think, really, in the 20th and now the 21st centuries.
We're talking about Sir Karl Popper.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with you, and with everyone listening, before we really dug into the research for this, I had him filed away in my brain as the meme guy.
The meme guy.
You know the little comic strip that goes around about the paradox of tolerance? It pops up on my feed every single time there's a controversy about free speech or, canceling someone.
Yeah.
And the gist everyone takes from it is we shouldn't tolerate intolerant people. Simple as that.
Right. Which is a very catchy slogan, but as we are going to find out, it is a massive, massive oversimplification of what Popper actually believed. It's like summarizing, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet as a story about bad dating choices.
Right, exactly. And that's our mission today. We want to go way beyond the meme. We're going to see how this guy, a cabinet maker turned philosopher, completely dismantled the idea that science is about finding truth, and then used that exact same logic to tear apart totalitarianism.
It is a massive scope. I mean, we're going to go from the behavior of subatomic particles all the way up to the behavior of dictators.
Wow.
But there is a single beautiful thread connecting it all, the problem of certainty.
So let's set the vibe for the listener. Because when I think of philosopher, I think of, ancient Greece, togas, or maybe a dusty French salon. But Popper is different.
Very, very different. You have to imagine Vienna in the 1920s. It's that period between the wars.
Mm-hmm.
The old Austro-Hungarian Empire has just collapsed.
Chaos.
Total chaos. The city is poor, it's starving in places, but it is also intellectually electric. You have these coffee houses just filled with radicals, artists, scientists. Freud is there. Wittgenstein is there. Everybody is arguing about the future.
But it's not just like polite debate, is it? The world is literally burning down around them.
Exactly. It's a pressure cooker. People are desperate for answers. They want to know what is going to happen next. Is the future going to be communism? Is it going to be fascism? They want a system.
Some prophecy.
A prophecy, exactly. And in the middle of this, you have this young Karl Popper who looks at all these people claiming they have the answer, and he basically says, you're all asking the wrong question.
I love that. The professional buzzkill of Vienna. So we have this dossier on him, his biography, his science, his politics. Where do we even start with a guy like this?
We have to start with the concept that underpins absolutely everything he did, the core paradox.
Okay, lay it on us.
It's the paradox of knowledge itself. I mean, most of us, especially if we love science, we grow up with this idea that science is the ultimate truth machine. You observe something, you test it, you prove it, and now it is a fact, capital F.
Right. Trust the science.
Right.
That phrase implies that science is a solid block of granite, that it's settled.
And Popper takes a sledgehammer to that granite. He says that science can never, ever prove anything is true.
Okay, hold on. You're going to have to walk me through this because that sounds like something a flat earther would say on a YouTube comment thread. You can't prove the earth is round.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but stick with me.
Okay, so if I drop this pen, it hits the desk. I do it again, it hits the desk. If I do that 1,000,000 times, haven't I proven the theory of gravity?
You've proven that the pen fell 1,000,000 times. You have not, in a strictly logical sense, proven it will fall the 1,000,001st time.
But come on, that's just being pedantic, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
course it's going to fall. The sun is going to rise tomorrow.
Is it? This is the problem of induction. It goes way back to the philosopher David Hume, but Popper really weaponized it. The assumption you're making, the one we all make, is that the future will resemble the past.
Yeah.
But there is no logical rule that guarantees that. It's an assumption. A very useful one, but it's still just a leap of faith.
Give me a real-world example where that assumption fails. Something less, the sun explodes.
The classic one is the turkey.
The turkey.
Bertrand Russell's turkey. Imagine you're a turkey on a farm. Every single day at 9 a.m., a friendly human comes and gives you food.
Okay. I'm a happy turkey.
You're a very happy turkey. And you're a scientific turkey, so you collect data. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the data is confirmed. When the man comes at 9 a.m., I get food. Your theory is verified hundreds of times. You have supreme confidence.
I feel like I know where this is going.
And then it's the day before Thanksgiving. The man comes at 9 a.m., and instead of feeding you, he wrings your neck. Your theory, which had been verified hundreds of times, was catastrophically wrong.
Okay, that's a good one. So the dossier also mentions swans. This feels a bit more down to earth.
This is the famous white swan problem. It's the same logic. Imagine you are a European naturalist in the 1600s. You have spent your entire life studying birds. You have traveled from England to France to Germany, all over Europe. Every single swan you have ever seen, and you've seen thousands of them, is white.
So I write in my notebook, all swans are white. And I feel pretty good about it. That's a scientific fact.
It feels like a fact. You have thousands of data points confirming it. You have verified your theory over and over and over again. You tell all your naturalist friends. It's in the textbooks.
All swans are white.
But then you hop on a boat, a very long and dangerous voyage, and you sail to Australia.
And I see a black swan.
One
Yeah.
single black swan. And in that 1 second, your entire lifetime of proof, all those thousands of observations, all the textbooks.
That's all just incinerated.
Incinerated. It's brutal, but it reveals the fundamental asymmetry that Popper was obsessed with. No amount of confirming instances, no number of white swans can ever prove the theory is true forever.
But one black swan can prove it is false. Instantly.
Exactly. You can never know for certain if you're right, but you can definitely, absolutely know if you're wrong.
And that, for him, is the secret weapon of science.
That's everything. We aren't in the business of verifying truth. We are in the business of hunting for black swans. We are in the business of falsification.
Okay, this brings us to what the notes call the demarcation problem. So this is how we tell the difference between real science and, nonsense, right?
Correct. In Popper's time, this was a huge, huge issue. He was looking at the intellectual landscape of Vienna in the 1920s. On one side, you had Albert Einstein, this towering figure of physics. On the other side, you had the psychoanalysts, Sigmund Freud and Alfred Adler. And Popper noticed something weird.
They were all considered scientists back then, weren't they? They were all doing science, supposedly.
They were. They were all part of this new, exciting wave of knowledge. But Popper felt there was a fundamental difference in how they operated. Let's look at Einstein first. The notes mention the 1919 solar eclipse expedition. This is a crucial story.
Yeah, flesh this out for me, because usually people just say Einstein was right, but it was actually a huge gamble, wasn't it?
It was a massive gamble, a career-ending gamble. Einstein had this theory of general relativity. It was beautiful math, but it was just paper. And it made a very specific, very weird prediction that gravity from a massive object like the sun actually warps the fabric of space-time.
Which means light should bend as it passes by.
Exactly. Light passing near the sun should bend, which sounds insane. Light goes in a straight line. Newton said light goes straight. For 200 years, that was the rule.
So Einstein is basically challenging Newton.
He's saying Newton was wrong. So the British astronomer Arthur Eddington organizes this expedition to the island of Principe off the coast of Africa to photograph the stars during a total solar eclipse.
And why an eclipse? Why did it have to be an eclipse?
Because that's the only time you can see the stars that are right next to the sun in the sky. Normally, the sun's glare would block them out.
Yeah.
So the plan was take a picture of the stars in their normal position months earlier. Then, during the eclipse, take a picture of the same stars. If Einstein was right, the stars in the eclipse photo would appear to be in slightly the wrong position.
Because their light had curved around the sun on its way to the camera?
Precisely. And if they were in the normal position...
Then Einstein is wrong. His theory is dead.
Utterly dead. He literally wrote to Eddington saying, if the redshift is not there, then the theory is untenable. He gave the world a roadmap to destroy his life's work. He put his neck on the guillotine. That is what Popper called a risky prediction.
He dared the universe to prove him wrong.
Yes. Now, compare that to what Popper saw with the psychoanalysts. He actually worked for a time in Alfred Adler's clinics for children in Vienna. He saw this firsthand.
And this is where that example of the drowning child comes from. This really clicked for me.
It's a perfect illustration of what Popper called pseudoscience. It's something that looks like science but isn't. So Popper posits two scenarios. Scenario A. A man pushes a child into a lake to drown him.
Horrible.
Scenario B. A man dives into a lake to save a drowning child.
Heroic. Total opposites. Evil and good.
But look at how Adler's theory of inferiority complexes handles them. Why did the man push the child? Adler would say something like, he is suffering from a deep-seated inferiority complex. By committing this heinous crime, he is attempting to prove to himself that he has the power to dare to defy society.
Okay. Makes a certain kind of sense, I guess. And the man who saved the child?
Adler would say. He's also suffering from an inferiority complex. By risking his own life to save another, he is proving to himself that he has the courage to overcome his feelings of inadequacy.
So, wait, the theory explains the murder and the rescue with the exact same core logic.
Exactly. No matter what the man does, kill the child, save the child, ignore the child, dance a jig by the lakeside, the theory can explain it. It's infinitely flexible. It's like a net with holes so big it can't catch any fish.
And usually we think that's a good thing. We think, wow, your theory explains everything. It must be brilliant.
And Popper screams, no. If a theory explains everything that could possibly happen, then it explains nothing. It's a horoscope. You will face a challenge today. Well, yeah, if you get fired, it fits. If you lose your keys, it fits. It forbids nothing.
That is such a huge shift in perspective. So a real scientific theory is defined by what it forbids. It draws a clear line in the sand and says, if you find a fossil of a rabbit in the Precambrian era, my entire theory of evolution is wrong.
Precisely. Strength is not being irrefutable. Strength is being vulnerable to refutation and surviving the attempt.
But this leads to a bit of an existential crisis, doesn't it? If we can't verify anything, we're just waiting around to be falsified. Does that mean we don't actually know anything? Is all our technology, our medicine, just a lucky guess it hasn't failed yet?
That's the scary interpretation, and some people do go there. But Popper didn't view it that way at all. He didn't think it was nihilistic. He saw it as a dynamic evolutionary process. He actually had a formula for it.
I saw that in the notes. PS1 to TT1 to EE1 to PS2. It looks like, I don't know, a chemical equation or something?
It's simpler than it looks. PS1 is problem situation 1. We start with a problem. Why do the planets move like that? That's our starting point.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then we move to TT1, tentative theory. We make a bold guess. Maybe they move in perfect circles because God loves circles.
Reasonable guess for the time, then EE1.
Error elimination. This is the Thunderdome. This is where we attack the theory from every angle. We make observations, we look for the black swans, and we realize, wait, the data from Mars is moving weirdly. It's not a perfect circle. So the circle theory dies. It's been falsified.
So are we back to the start? Do we know nothing again?
No, this is the crucial part. We are at PS2, problem situation 2. We have a nearer, better, more refined problem. If it's not a circle, what the heck is it? And then we make a new tentative theory, TT2. Maybe it's an ellipse. And we start the process of error elimination all over again.
So we're failing forward.
We are failing our way to success. We are trading big, crude errors for smaller, more subtle errors. Popper called this verisimilitude.
Which means truth-likeness.
Exactly. We are getting closer to the truth, increasing our truth-likeness, even if we can never be 100% certain we have arrived at the final capital T truth.
It's like Zeno's paradox. You get halfway to the wall, then halfway again, and halfway again, but you never quite touch it.
You get close enough to build a GPS system that can guide a missile to a target or a car to your house, and for practical purposes, that's what matters.
Okay, before we leave the science section, I have to challenge you on one thing. I'm playing the role of the skeptical listener here.
Please do.
You said we can't prove anything, but 2 + 2 = 4.
Ah, yes, the mathematics dilemma.
I mean, come on. That's not a theory. That's a fact. You can't falsify that. I can't go to Australia and find a 2 + 2 = 5. It's just true.
You are absolutely right, but in a very specific sense. Popper had to deal with this, obviously. And he made a really clever distinction between pure math and applied math.
What's the difference?
Pure math. The statement 2 + 2 = 4 is a logical definition. It's a closed loop of logic. It's true because we defined the symbol 2 and the symbol 4 and the operator plus in such a way that it has to be true.
So it's a tautology. It's true by definition.
Exactly. It doesn't tell us anything about the physical universe. It tells us about the rules of our own logical language. It's certain, but it's abstract.
Okay, I think I follow. But what happens when you apply it?
The moment you apply it to the physical world, to world 1, as he'd call it, it becomes a hypothesis. It becomes falsifiable.
Give me an example of that.
Popper used the example of rabbits. If I say 2 apples plus 2 apples equals 4 apples, that's an applied theory, and it works. If I put 2 apples in a basket and add 2 more, I have 4. The theory holds up.
Sure.
But if I take 2 rabbits,
Yeah.
and I add 2 rabbits, and I put them in a box and wait a year.
I see where you're going with this. You're going to have a lot more than 4 rabbits.
A lot more. So the applied physical theory, 2 rabbits plus 2 rabbits equals 4 rabbits, has been falsified by the biological process of reproduction. Or think about water droplets. 1 drop plus 1 drop equals 1 bigger drop.
So 1 + 1 = 1 in that context.
In that physical context, yes. So Popper's point is elegant. Logical truth is certain but abstract. Physical truth is concrete but uncertain. You can never have both at the same time.
That is actually kind of mind-bending. The absolute certainty of math only works if the physical world behaves itself according to the rules we set.
And the physical world loves to misbehave.
Okay, so that's the engine of his intellect. Falsification, error is good, testing is everything. But I want to pivot now to the man himself.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned earlier that he wasn't just sitting in a library dreaming this stuff up. He had a life that really, really informed this worldview.
He really did. This wasn't just an abstract game for him. He was born in 1902 in Vienna, and we have to talk about his background because it sets up the tragedy that follows. He was from a family of Jewish descent that had converted to Lutheranism before he was born.
So they were very assimilated.
Very assimilated, very high culture. His dad was a successful lawyer with a personal library of something like 12,000 to 14,000 books.
That's not a library, that's a bunker made of paper. That's unbelievable.
He grew up just swimming in ideas. But Popper was a bit of a contrarian from day one. He found formal schooling boring, so he quit school at 16. And here's the detail I love, the thing that grounds him. He decided he wanted to be a manual laborer.
The rich kid who wants to get his hands dirty.
Hey.
A classic story.
Exactly. He tried street construction first, but he was physically quite small and frail, and he literally couldn't handle the heavy labor. It was breaking him. So he switched apprenticeships and became a cabinet maker.
He became a carpenter.
A journeyman cabinet maker. And I think this matters so much. When you make a cabinet, you can't theorize it into existence. If you measure the wood wrong, the door doesn't close. Reality hits you in the face immediately. There's no wiggle room.
It's falsification in wood. Your theory, this piece is 30 centimeters, is tested by the saw.
Exactly. But while he's sanding wood by day, he's getting radicalized by night. It's 1919, the First World War is over, Vienna is in turmoil, everyone is starving, and the communists are promising a worker's paradise, a utopia. A teenage Karl Popper says, "Sign me up."
So he becomes a Marxist.
For a few months, he really believed they had the answer. They had the scientific theory of history, you see. They claimed to know the future. But then the incident at Hurlgas happens.
This is the turning point, isn't it? Paint the picture for us.
It's June 15th, 1919. There's a protest. The communists are trying to free some comrades from a police station in Hurlgas. Popper is there, caught up in the fervor. The crowd is surging. It's chaotic. And then the police open fire on the protesters.
And people died.
8 young men. Unarmed party comrades. Some of them were Popper's friends. He saw them fall. He saw the blood on the pavement. And he was devastated. He felt personally responsible. He had been encouraging people to join this movement.
That's a trauma. That stays with you for life.
But the trauma of the deaths wasn't what changed his philosophy. It was what happened after. He went back to the party headquarters, expecting everyone to be in mourning, horrified, expecting them to say, "We made a terrible mistake. We shouldn't have provoked this."
And instead,
the party leaders were cool. They were calculated. They told him that this was necessary. They said the deaths were actually a good thing because they would intensify the class struggle and hasten the inevitable revolution.
they were accelerationists.
Exactly. They believed that things had to get worse to get better. They were willing to sacrifice human lives for what they called historical destiny.
They treated his dead friends like pawns in a chess game.
Worse, they treated them like variables in an equation that they were certain was correct. And that is when Popper snapped. He looked at these men and had this horrifying epiphany. You don't know the future. You are guessing. But you are willing to sacrifice living, breathing human beings for a guess that you've dressed up as a scientific certainty.
That is the moment. That's the direct link between his philosophy of science and his politics.
It is the rat trap. He saw this kind of ideology as a trap where you justify atrocities today for a paradise tomorrow that might never come. It poisons everything.
And that sent him on the path to writing The Open Society and Its Enemies.
It did. He realized that the intellectual arrogance of knowing the truth is the root of all tyranny. If you are 100% sure you are right and 100% sure the revolution is inevitable, then killing a few people who stand in your way isn't murder. It's just sweeping up the dust of history.
So he dedicates his life to fighting that certainty. But he has to run first, doesn't he? The Nazis are coming.
He's of Jewish descent, living in Vienna in the 1930s. He knows exactly what's coming. He writes his first major book, The Logic of Scientific Discovery, partly as an academic credential, a resume, to get a job abroad so he can escape.
It was literally his ticket out of Austria.
And it worked. He got a post at Canterbury University College in New Zealand. So picture this. It's the late 1930s, early 1940s. Hitler is annexing Austria, invading Poland, the Holocaust is beginning, the world is on fire, And Karl Popper is literally on the other side of the planet in quiet, peaceful, sheep-filled New Zealand.
He must have felt so helpless,
It-
so isolated.
He felt incredible guilt. He was safe while his friends and family back in Europe were in mortal danger. Many of them were murdered. So he decided to make his next book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, his war effort. He couldn't shoot a gun, so he was going to shoot bullets at the ideas that created Hitler and Stalin.
Let's get into that book, because open society is a term we hear a lot, usually thanks to George Soros, who was his student, and we'll get to him later. But what does Popper actually mean by an open society?
An open society is, at its core, a society that recognizes it could be wrong. It's a society that is structured around the principles of the scientific method.
How does that translate to government and laws?
Well, think about its opposite, a closed society, like a traditional tribe or a monarchy or a modern dictatorship. In a closed society, the truth is fixed and handed down from on high. The leader knows the truth. The ancestors know the truth. The sacred texts know the truth. You don't challenge it. It's rigid. It's tribal.
And if the leader is wrong, or the sacred texts are wrong about something,
Then the society drives straight off a cliff. There is no mechanism for error correction. To question the leader is treason.
so an open society is all about building in mechanisms for error correction.
Exactly. And this leads to his redefinition of democracy. This is really important. If you ask most people what is democracy, they'll say rule by the people or the majority is right.
Or choosing the best leader, finding the wisest person to put in charge.
Right. And the ancient question from Plato onwards was always, who should rule? That's the classic question of political philosophy. Popper says it's the wrong question entirely.
Why is it the wrong question?
Because if you ask who should rule, the answer is always some variation of the best person, the wisest, the strongest, the purest. But who defines the best? Hitler thought he was the best. Stalin thought he was the best. It's an invitation to tyranny.
So what's the right question to ask?
The right question, Popper says, is how can we organize our political institutions so that bad or incompetent rulers can be prevented from doing too much damage and can be removed without violence?
That is incredibly pragmatic. It's not about finding a messiah, it's about damage control.
It's negative politics. Just like science is about eliminating bad theories, democracy is about peacefully eliminating bad leaders. The ballot box isn't a magical tool for finding the truth. It's a nonviolent mechanism for firing the manager without having to start a civil war.
That makes democracy sound less like a holy crusade and more like taking out the trash on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Which is honestly refreshing.
It lowers the stakes. And in politics, lowering the stakes is a very, very good thing.
But this brings us to the main villain of his book, this idea of historicism. Now, we need to clarify this because it sounds like he hates history.
He loves history. He's a great historian. He hates historicism, capital H. This is the belief that history has a script, that there are inexorable laws of history, just like there are laws of physics.
The Marxist idea, for example, that feudalism inevitably leads to capitalism, which inevitably leads to communism.
Exactly. Or the fascist idea that the Third Reich will last 1,000 years because it is the destiny of the Aryan race. Popper attacked this with a logic bomb that I think is just brilliant in its simplicity.
Okay, walk us through the logic step by step.
Step 1. The course of human history is strongly influenced by the growth of human knowledge.
Okay, that seems obvious. We invent the printing press or the atomic bomb, and history changes course. Agreed.
Step 2. We cannot predict, by rational or scientific methods, the future growth of our own scientific knowledge.
Hold on, explain that.
If you could predict that you will invent, say, a cure for cancer in the year 2030, you would have to know what that cure is right now in order to predict it. And if you knew what it was now, you'd invent it now, not in 2030.
Right. You can't predict an invention before you invent it. The act of predicting it is the act of inventing it.
Exactly. So the conclusion. Therefore, we cannot predict the future course of human history.
Oh.
The future is open. It's not written. It's not a movie we're just watching. So anyone standing on a podium telling you history is on our side or the decline of the West is inevitable is a fraud. They are selling you a snake oil prophecy to get you to give up your freedom and your critical mind.
It's incredibly empowering, but also a little terrifying. Because if there's no destiny, there's no script, then we're driving the bus completely without a map.
We are making the map as we go. That is the burden and the glory of an open society.
Okay, we have to address the elephant in the room, the meme, the paradox of tolerance. We've set the stage, now let's unpack it properly.
That's it.
The internet version, the one you see in that cartoon, is basically, if you are intolerant, I don't have to tolerate you. So I can punch you or ban you or deplatform you.
Which is a very dangerous and simplistic reading.
Yeah.
Because who defines intolerant? If I disagree with your tax policy, am I being intolerant? Can you silence me? It becomes a weapon to shut down any dissent.
So what was Popper's actual nuanced argument?
He was a staunch, almost absolute defender of free speech. He says, and this is a key quote, "I do not imply that we should always suppress the utterance of intolerant philosophies. As long as we can counter them by rational argument and keep them in check by public opinion, suppression would certainly be most unwise."
So if a guy is standing on a street corner shouting some hateful garbage, Popper's first instinct is, let him shout, and then go over there and debate him. Show everyone why he's wrong.
Yes. Don't make him a martyr. Don't drive his ideas underground where they can't be challenged. Defeat him with better ideas in the open marketplace.
But there is a limit. There's a red line.
There's a clear red line. He says we reserve the right to suppress them, if necessary, even by force, if they are not prepared to meet us on the level of rational argument, but begin by denouncing all argument. They may forbid their followers to listen to rational argument and teach them to answer arguments by the use of their fists or pistols.
So the moment you stop talking and you pick up a rock, you lose your right to be tolerated.
Or even the moment you start inciting other people to pick up rocks and abandon debate. It's not about the content of their ideas, however vile. It's about their refusal to participate in the process of rational debate itself. If you use your freedom of speech to destroy the very possibility of free speech for others, you've broken the social contract of the open society.
But it's a measure of last resort. It's a defensive measure to protect tolerance, not an offensive tool for canceling people you find annoying.
Precisely. That nuance is missing from 99.9% of the Twitter debates on this topic.
Nuance usually is. Before we get to the really trippy metaphysics, there is one more political point in the notes. The conspiracy theory of society. This feels huge right now.
It's the default setting of the modern mind, isn't it? Something bad happens, a pandemic, a recession, a war, and we assume someone planned this.
The elites, the deep state, the globalists. There's always a shadowy group pulling the strings.
Popper says this is a theological error. It's a secularized version of the belief in gods. We used to think the gods made the crops fail or the storms rage. Now we've killed God, so we had to replace him with something just as powerful and all-knowing. We replaced him with conspirators.
We assume that powerful people are competent enough to actually control the world.
And Popper says, they aren't. He says, famously, nothing ever comes off exactly as intended. Even the most powerful dictator in the world issues an order, and by the time it trickles down through the bureaucracy, it gets misinterpreted, it changes. Then it hits the real world, and a million unintended consequences happen that nobody could have predicted.
So the recession isn't a secret plot by a cabal of bankers.
Yeah.
It's just a massive, complicated screw-up.
It's usually a toxic mix of greed, incompetence, error, and just the chaotic friction of millions of people making individual choices. Popper thinks assuming a conspiracy is actually wildly optimistic because it implies someone is in control. The reality that no one is really driving the bus is much, much scarier.
I think I prefer the Illuminati. At least they have a plan,
That's the psychological appeal. It's comforting.
All right, let's take a deep breath. We've done the science, we've done the politics. Now, the notes say we're going to the three worlds. And frankly, this part of the outline looks a little sci-fi.
It is where Popper gets really creative and a bit strange. He wasn't just a dry logician. He had a theory of reality and ontology. He said the entire universe consists of three distinct but interacting worlds.
Okay. Let's start with World 1.
World 1 is the physical stuff, the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Atoms, rocks, tables, your brain, the stars, plants, animals, everything that physics, chemistry, and biology study.
Got it. The hardware of the universe. So what's World 2?
World 2 is the psychological stuff, your subjective consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings of joy or pain, the feeling of seeing the color blue, your memories. It's the software running inside your individual head.
Okay, the hardware and my personal software. For a long time, philosophers pretty much stopped there, right? Matter in mind, dualism.
Yeah, they did. But Popper said, no, there is a third crucial thing, and he called it World 3.
And what is World 3?
World 3 consists of the objective products of the human mind. Things like myths, stories, philosophical arguments, scientific theories, mathematical laws, symphonies, engineering diagrams, legal codes.
But wait a minute. A book containing a theory is World 1. It's paper and ink. And my understanding of the theory is, in my head, That's World 2. Why do we need a separate World 3?
This is the key. Popper argued that once you create an idea and put it out into the world, once you write the book or compose the symphony, it becomes autonomous. It takes on a life of its own, independent of its creator and of any individual mind.
I'm not sure I get that. Give me a concrete example.
Think about the number system. Humans invented the concept of numbers, probably to count sheep or something. That was a World 2 thought. We wrote them down as symbols. That was a World 1 act. But once we created the system of integers, we discovered that there are prime numbers.
Oh.
Did we invent prime numbers, or did we discover them? They were an unintended necessary consequence of the system we built. They were waiting there in World 3 to be found. They exist objectively, whether we know about them or not.
So World 3 is like a jungle we planted, but things are now growing in it that we didn't plant ourselves.
That's a perfect analogy. Or think about an algorithm today. A team of coders writes a social media algorithm. That's a World 3 object. That algorithm is then released onto the internet. It starts interacting with millions of teenagers. It starts changing their self-esteem, which is World 2. It keeps them awake at night, raising their cortisol levels, which is World 1.
And the coders didn't intend for the algorithm to cause insomnia in a kid in Ohio.
Exactly. But the World 3 object is doing it. It has real causal power. It acts back on World 2 and World 1. World 3 pushes back.
That makes the thought experiment in the outline, the one about the libraries, really haunting.
It is. Popper asks, if the human race was wiped out tomorrow, every single World 2 mind just gone, and all our machines broke down, World 1 tools all gone, but our libraries remained intact, does the knowledge still exist?
If an alien lands and decodes a physics textbook,
The knowledge is dormant, but it is objectively there. The solution to a problem is in that book, waiting. It doesn't need a human mind to actively sustain it. It has crystallized into a World 3 object.
I feel like this has to connect to his view on evolution. Because if ideas and problems can have this objective power, that changes how we see biology.
Massively. This is his active Darwinism. He hated this standard, almost mechanical view of evolution that was common at the time, this idea that animals are just passive victims. Oh, the environment got cold, so the ones with thin fur died.
It's too passive. It's too robotic.
Right. Popper proposed the spearhead model. He said the organism is an explorer. It has goals. It is trying to solve problems.
The hopeful behavioral monster. I love that name. It sounds like a rock band.
It's great, isn't it? The core idea is that the behavior often changes before the body does. The mind leads the way.
How does that work?
Take the giraffe. The old passive view is random mutations produced a giraffe with a slightly longer neck, and that giraffe survived better and had more babies, Popper says. Maybe the giraffe's ancestor developed a preference, a World 2 desire for the tender leaves at the tops of the trees. It wanted to reach them.
So it spent its life stretching its neck, trying to get to those leaves.
It pushed itself into a new ecological niche. This new behavior created a new selection pressure. Now, any small genetic mutation that gave a slightly longer neck was suddenly hugely valuable. The mind, the desire, the problem-solving led the way. The physical body followed over generations.
That puts the mind and preference in the driver's seat of evolution, not just random chance.
It restores a kind of dignity and agency to life. We aren't just clay being molded by the wind and rain. We are active agents solving problems.
Which leads us directly to the question of free will.
He was an interactionist dualist, which is a bit of a mouthful, but he worked with the neuroscientist Sir John Eccles, and they basically believed the non-physical mind, World 2, genuinely controls the physical brain, World 1, not just the other way around. He called the mind the editor.
The editor, what does that mean?
Think of your physical brain as a creative but chaotic generator. It's constantly throwing up random thoughts, impulses, ideas, maybe spurred by quantum indeterminacy at the neuronal level. It's brainstorming. But you, the self, the conscious World 2, mind you, are the editor. You sit at the desk and you say, no, not that thought. That's a stupid idea. No, not that impulse. That would be rude. Yes, that one. That's a good one. Let's act on that.
So freedom isn't in generating the random thoughts. It's in selecting which ones to approve and act on.
Exactly. Freedom is the power of veto. It's the selection mechanism that sits on top of the random generation.
Wow. Okay, we have built a pretty towering statue of this man. But we have to be Popperian about Popper himself. We have to criticize him. We have to try and falsify him. Who are his biggest critics?
The biggest challenger by far was Thomas Kuhn. He wrote the hugely influential book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he basically said, Popper, this is a nice, logical story, but have you ever actually met a scientist?
What do you mean by that?
Kuhn argued that in the real world, scientists don't spend their days actively trying to falsify their core theories. They love their theories. They've built their entire careers on them. They have tenure. They have grants.
The sunk cost fallacy is huge in academia.
Enormous. Kuhn said if you spent 30 years working on, say, string theory, and a new experiment comes out that seems to contradict it, you don't jump for joy and shout, "Hooray, falsification!" You say the experimental equipment must be broken, or the data was analyzed wrong. You invent patches and modifications to protect your theory.
So Kuhn is saying science is more political and tribal and, well, more human than Popper's idealized version.
Yes. Kuhn's big idea was that science works in paradigms. For long periods of normal science, everyone agrees on the fundamental rules, and they just solve little puzzles within that framework, and they actively ignore the anomalies until the anomalies get so numerous and so bad that the whole system crashes. That's a paradigm shift.
So Popper is describing the ideal of how science should work, and Kuhn is describing the messy reality of how it often does work.
That's a very fair summary. And Popper really, really hated Kuhn's view. He called it the myth of the framework. He thought it was a dangerous, relativistic idea to say, we are all trapped in our paradigms and can't talk to each other. He believed we could always break out if we had enough critical spirit.
And what about the naive falsification critique? The notes mention the discovery of Neptune.
Right, this is the practical issue. When astronomers in the 19th century looked at the orbit of Uranus, it was wrong. It didn't follow Newton's laws precisely.
So technically, Newton's theory of gravity was falsified.
Technically, yes. A strict Popperian would have had to say, okay, throw Newton in the trash. But they didn't. They said, maybe the theory is right, but our assumptions are wrong. Maybe there is another planet out there that we can't see, and its gravity is pulling on Uranus.
So they used Newton's laws to predict where this invisible planet must be.
Exactly. They pointed their telescopes to that spot in the sky, and there was Neptune. So by refusing to give up on the theory, by being a bit dogmatic, they made one of the greatest discoveries in the history of astronomy.
Sometimes being stubborn is good. If you falsify a good theory too early because of one weird result, you might miss the bigger picture.
Precisely. Popper later admitted this. He said, a certain amount of dogmatism is necessary. You have to defend the theory for a while to see what it can really do. It's a delicate balance.
You defend it, but you have to know when to fold them, as they say.
Exactly. The Kenny Rogers philosophy of science.
So let's bring it all home. Why does Karl Popper matter today? We are sitting here in the mid-2020s. Why should you, the listener, care about a guy who died in 1994?
Just look at the world around you. We have the rise of new forms of authoritarianism. We have strongman leaders promising they alone can fix it, that they have the answers. That is the closed society fighting back with a vengeance. Popper's work is the best intellectual defense we have. He reminds us that the strongman is a myth. No one knows the future.
And in science and public life.
We have a crisis of trust and expertise. People don't trust the experts anymore. Popper gives us a way to rebuild that trust, but on a more honest foundation. We shouldn't say, trust me, I'm a scientist, I know the absolute truth. We should say, trust this finding for now. Because we have tried our absolute hardest to break it, to prove it wrong from every angle, and so far, we couldn't.
That is a much more humble and, frankly, a much more honest pitch.
And finally, on a personal, individual level, Popper's philosophy teaches us how to think. It teaches us that being wrong isn't a sin. It's not a failure of character. It's a necessary step towards being less wrong.
I think that's the hardest lesson for any of us to learn. Our egos hate being wrong. It feels like a personal defeat.
But if you can learn to separate your ego from your ideas, if you can say, my idea died in that argument, but I am still here and now I know better, that is liberation. That is the open mind.
So here's the challenge for everyone listening. The next time you are in an argument about politics, about work, about anything, and you feel that hot flash of absolute certainty, that feeling of, I am 100% right, just pause and ask yourself the Popper question.
What evidence, what fact, what piece of information would convince me that I am wrong about this?
And if the answer that comes back is nothing,
then you aren't thinking. You're preaching,
yeah.
And you've closed the door to knowledge.
We're going to leave you with one final image to chew on. Go back to that alien library. The human race is gone. The books are all there. World 3 is waiting in the dark.
Does the truth of the Pythagorean theorem exist if there's no one there to read it? Or do we light it up with our consciousness?
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.